Welcome to the last lesson of Unit 1 of the Social Studies content for GED Studies. This lesson is going to be pertaining to the foundation or the founding of our 13 colonies. And from here, we're going to be working on Unit 2 in the next few weeks that will be touching a little bit more about the historical side of our country. And we'll get into that later. But before we get started on anything, I want to remind you that if you are a prospective GED student, someone who's wanting to get enrolled and get started on your classes again, or if you're a transition student who's doing some work on reading and language arts, you can give us a call at 502-213-5212. You can look us up on our Facebook page at JCTC Skills U. Or you can look for us at our YouTube channel, which that's where this is going to be posted. There at Skills U Online. You can leave us a message there on our Facebook page, or you can drop us a note there in the discussion tab on Skills U Online on our YouTube channel. We do service 8 different counties. We service Bullitt, Carroll, Shelby, Spencer, Gallatin, Oldham, and Trimble, and also Henry counties. So give us a call, drop us a line, send us a message, and we'll help you get started. Okay, so like I said, today's lesson, we're going to be talking about the 13 colonies and their foundation. So it says right here on this slide, our nation's foundation. That rhymes a little bit, doesn't it? There were reasons why our colonists, the first people who came over across the ocean, came to us or were escaping, quote unquote, escaping the things that were going on in England. But we're going to talk about that in the next couple of slides as well. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, sorry about that. But looking at this map, you can see that there were 3 quote-unquote divisions. And I say quote-unquote because they were broken down into that as reasons for the reason why the settlers settled where they did. But anyway, the first part was called the New England Colonies, and they settled to practice religious freedom. Their industry was lumber and shipbuilding because, as you'll see in one of our videos, there wasn't very much, very much adequacy of plant growth, so it was hard for them to grow any kind of crops. So they ended up resorting to the ocean, to the waters next door to fish and things like that, and then they used the trees, and it's still beautiful up there. I love that part of the country, but they used the trees to build ships. And their culture, again, were small towns and small family farms. They said they couldn't grow like big farms and crops and things like that. It was basically all small. But when you moved a little bit further south, you came into the middle colonies. These are the colonists who set up to form families and businesses. Their industry was agriculture and trade in wheat and barley and other grains. And the culture became more urban. Wasn't thought of as urban then, but now it would be thought of as urban because they have cities and then hard goods industries. Now then the Southern Colonies, they set up large agricultural trading companies. That's where the biggest plant growth or crop growth was available. Their industry, again, were plantation farming of tobacco. That's where tobacco originally came from. Cotton and rice. And the culture were small towns that served as plantation trades. So those are the different, that's how our nation first started. It was divided up into these 3 sections based on agricultural needs, economics, as we're going to talk about, and religion. So when we're going into our maps here, remember at the very beginning of the unit, we were talking about how to read map keys, what kind of information we can glean from it or learn from it, another word for glean, and how we can interpret that. So if we look here, we see the different divisions of the colonies that became states, and those numbers are basically the population, the density of it. So like in New Hampshire, there was, at the point when it first started, when the 13 colonies were first founded, there was a total population of 654. Now, if you see, you can tell that that's what that is all about, But when you look at your key, you see that there are color codes, and you can see that there are percentages. So when you look at this, you can see that the main part of the growth would be found in the darker areas with the population density where it's more, it's larger. And that is mostly because that is where most of the slaves from Africa were transported to, because they needed them to help grow their crops. But going back to our map skills, referring to the map keys helps us to understand and decode the theme of the map and understand its content. So this map itself shows us one thing, and that is population density. It also shows us, also shows us plant growth or crop growth. Now, why do we need to understand about the 13 colonies? Well, let me ask you these questions. Where have you lived? Where were your parents and grandparents born? Do you have relatives who may have moved from or to from different parts of the world? Okay, so for me in particular, I know that my family on my father's side moved from Germany and France. On my mother's side, Ireland. So I have a little Irish descent, French and German in my bloodstream, in my DNA. And knowing about your past and your family history helps you to know more about yourself. Knowing where our country began, the original 13 colonies, also helps you to understand more about why and how our country was founded. And also, these are topics that we're going to continue talking about in this lesson a little bit, but also in Unit 2, which we're going to be talking more about U.S. history. And again, I don't want to give too much away, so we're going to talk about that a little bit more towards the end of this lesson. So get your pencil and paper ready. We're going to be doing an exercise on the 13 colonies. And one of the things for those of you who are already familiar with the GED process and those of you who are going into it brand new, you'll understand why reading is so important when it comes to social studies, because there are different questions and different elements that you need to be able to interpret, like main idea, supporting details, sequencing, and cause and effect. Now I want to go back to sequencing real quick, because sequencing can be a number of different lessons there. I know when I teach language arts and we talk about sequencing, I ask my students to identify the steps to making a peanut butter sandwich. And I do mean from the very beginning to the very end. And a lot of times we forget, we have to close that cabinet door after we take the peanut butter jar down, or we have to get that knife out of the drawer before, or we have to open the drawer before we get the knife out of the drawer. Those are just the small steps, but it teaches us how to look at how sequencing works. You have to do the first thing first, the second thing second, and the last thing last in order for it to work. Now in social studies, we're going to be talking more about the foundation of the states, or the colonies, and how this all worked together in forming the beginning of our country. So on your map, I'm sorry, not on your map, but on your pencil and paper, I want you to identify, in this video we're going to watch, I want you to identify the main idea, the supporting details, remember supporting details support the main idea, the sequencing that they're talking about, which is going to be talking about the sequencing of the foundation of the different colonies and the times and dates, and the cause and effect that this video discusses about the reasoning why our colonies are formed the way they were, and the reason why the colonists came from New England, or not New England, but England from across the ocean. So if you got your pencil and paper ready, we're going to watch this video on the 13 colonies. And I'll try not to forget to share. Okay, let me share.
Whoa, adapted mind math. Come explore the site with me.
Okay.
I'm in first grade, so I'll pick that. Neato, a fun fishing adventure.
We're going to skip this ad. All right, here we go. Enjoy.
Clarendon Learning explores the 13 original colonies. What is a colony? Well, there are ant colonies, bee colonies, and Malibu Colony Beach. A colony is where a group of people settle in a new place and work together for a common goal. Today, many countries around the world lay claim to colonies and territories. The United States, for example, claim under its jurisdiction the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, and Puerto Rico, among many other territories. Today, we are going to consider the 13 original colonies, also known as the British Colonies. Before we became the nifty 50 United States of America, explorers from throughout Europe came to this continent. They came from Spain, they came from France, and they came from the Netherlands. They came to hunt and fish and trap and establish trading posts. It is important to remember that these explorers were not discovering a new land. Native American peoples had already been living here for thousands of years. In the 16th century, England had a problem. The people were hungry, and more farmland was being converted to pasture land to raise sheep for wool. Wool was more profitable than food. The London Company in England and other groups with some financial support from the King of England began to immigrate to North America. They came for different reasons. They came to grow crops for food and trade, to hunt and trap animals for food and trade. The new settlers wanted to become wealthy. They wanted to find gold and precious minerals and iron ore and harvest timber for shipbuilding and develop their economic opportunities. They also came to worship God according to the dictates of their own conscience, without interference from the King of England or other powerful religions in England. England claimed ownership of the Atlantic coast of North America, but the Dutch also claimed lands as well as immigrants from Sweden. And of course, many areas were already well settled by the indigenous people of North America. Let's take a brief look at each of these original colonies according to their geographical locations. We begin with the New England colonies, which are Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. The colonies in this region were not particularly good for farming, but the immigrants grew what they could. Some corn, beans, and squash. The New England area, however, were rich in forests for lumbering and shipbuilding. They were also good for trapping animals for furs. And what kind of animals do you think provided the most valuable fur? Well, beaver. Apparently, beaver hats were a very popular fashion statement, and beaver pelts were an important commodity to be traded to Europe. In 1620, the Mayflower Pilgrims settled in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and labored hard to make a life. They pledged their allegiance to the King of England, but they also wanted to govern themselves in this new land. So they wrote a list of laws and rules they all pledged to live by. This was called the Mayflower Compact, and it is considered the first governing document of Plymouth Colony. You can check out another great video by Clarendon Learning, The Story of the Pilgrims. In 1628, Massachusetts Bay Colony became organized as one of the 13 colonies. Maine, to the north, did not officially become an independent colony, but it was, however, part of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Massachusetts Colony played a key role during the American Revolution with the Boston Tea Party. On to New Hampshire. In about 1622, Captain John Mason was given a land grant from the Council of New England. New Hampshire was named after the county in England where Captain Mason was raised, which was named Hampshire. Get it? New Hampshire. Fishing and whaling were important here. In addition to meat, whale oil was used for fuel and lamps. The Puritan minister, Reverend Thomas Hooker, who lived in the Massachusetts colony, had a conflict and disagreement with other Puritan leaders. To avoid persecution, Reverend Hooker, along with about 100 others, left the colony. They settled in the area of Hartford, Connecticut, and in about 1636 became a recognized colony. The name Connecticut is a Native American word, which interpreted means along the tidal river. And the Connecticut River is the longest river in the New England region. Shipbuilding became important here, as well as the export of real maple syrup. Rhode Island and Providence plantations together became a colony in the New World and was established by the Puritan Roger Williams. Roger Williams had been expelled from the Massachusetts colony for his independent, forward-thinking ideas. He believed in liberty of conscience and separation of government and religion. It was important to Roger Williams that the land he settled be purchased from the Native Americans. Let's visit the middle colonies: Delaware, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. Delaware was a colony on the west side of the Delaware River Bay, and originally was settled by the Swedes and Dutch until eventually becoming an English colony in 1664, and was also at one time governed as part of Pennsylvania. Originally settled by the Dutch, the colony of New Netherland came under control of England in 1664 at the surrender of Fort Amsterdam, located on what is now the island of Manhattan. James, the Duke of York, sent 4 English warships into the harbor, and the Dutch gave up the region without a fight. The colony was renamed Province of New York. A portion of the colony was deeded to 2 principal proprietors, George Carteret and Lord Berkeley of Stratton, and they renamed the colony New Jersey. Many of the Dutch settlers were permitted to remain and continue their businesses, and the proprietors worked to attract settlers by establishing a representative government and allowing freedom of religion. These colonies were great for farming and considered the breadbasket, since fields of wheat could be harvested and ground into flour and shipped to England. These colonies also provided coal and iron ore. King Charles gave a large land grant to William Penn, a Quaker, and named the province Penn's Woods. In Latin, it became Pennsylvania. It was a place where other Quakers could come and work and live without persecution. And since the king owed William's father a lot of money, William received a big chunk of land. It was important to William Penn that the Native Americans be treated with respect and compensated fairly. Hang in there, kids, we're just about finished. Let's take a break and take a look at this picture of the Liberty Bell. It's in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We now come to the Southern Colonies: Virginia, North and South Carolina, Maryland, and Georgia. Can you remember the reasons why England wanted to colonize North America? A couple of them were to grow food, and another to improve the economy of England and the settlers. Well, the climate and the soil in the Southern Colonies were great for growing tobacco. Yep, that's not food, but it was a cash crop, and a lot of money was made on the export of that stuff. At the time, they didn't know it was bad for you. The farms of the Southern Colonies were successful growing tobacco, rice, timber, and cotton. Slave labor and indentured servants were used to work these large plantations. The weather was great, but the downside was these colonies were a breeding ground for malaria and other disease. So there is something to be said for the cold winters of the North. Growth and development continued with the original colonies, and eventually the people began to share their identity as Americans. The overreach of Great Britain and the burden of taxation became a catalyst that would cause the colonies to revolt and rebel. Now would be a good time to check out the activity pages.
Okay, so let's get back to our PowerPoint. So you can see that there are a lot of different cause and effects in this video. But the main idea, let's go to our next slide because we've got answers. But the main idea is actually the founding of our country, the original 13 colonies. And the supporting details for the main idea is the explanation of the 13 colonies and how they moved from the east towards the west to found North America, to claim it as their own, to create a new land for themselves. And it is very interesting to see that And in the mix of it all, the colonists themselves had some different issues, not agreeing with Roger Williams. Remember, he had to leave and move to or he left Massachusetts, I believe it was, yes. And because, and then of course there was William Penn, who was actually granted the money, the deed for Pennsylvania, and the different aspects or different opinions that they had in how to welcome the Native Americans, how to treat them. All of this was starting to come around at that point. So you've got your main idea, which is the founding of the country, our original 13 colonies, the supporting details and all of those facts that go in with that, sequence dates, those kind of things. Remember, the northern colonies were founded, then the middle, and then the southern, and they trickled from the north to the south once they found out the different aspects and different things that they could appreciate. And then remember also in the sequence dates, they had the founding of the different colonies, like in 1620, the Mayflower, the Pilgrims came across in the Mayflower. And then they decided there needed to be a set of rules so that everyone could follow them. That was when the creation of the Mayflower Compact came around. 1622, New Hampshire was founded. 1628, the Massachusetts Bay Colony was founded. And then in 1664, Delaware was founded. So all of these are different sequence dates, and then all of these other little things go inside that area to kind of show you the pattern of how everything worked. And then the cause and effect. Remember, they came across because they wanted religious freedom. They had opportunity for more money. Agriculture, especially in the Southern Colonies, was a big cash crop, was tobacco. So there was economics, there was religious freedom, education. All of those things were the reasons, the cause and the effect of the reason why they moved, and the effect was that they were able to practice the way they wanted to. So reading skills and social studies do go hand in hand. It's very important that you have those reading skills down when you get started with your social studies. Okay, so I've got a couple of videos. Your instructor may ask you to do this. If you're in my class, I'll ask you to do this. But it's the same format, same platform. You're going to be looking for the main idea and supporting details, sequence of events, and cause and effect. And the next two videos touch on some of our more not really recent, but a little bit past the founding of the country, and helps show you how to, or you'll be able to learn how it all formed and how it developed as the years went on. So the first one you'll be working on is on the American Revolution. The second one will be the Civil War. Sorry about that. So you'll use the same thing. You'll look for the main idea, the supporting details, the sequence of events, and also cause and effect strategies that you are hearing about or observing in these videos. Also the Great Depression. That is the more recent. Okay, so we're at the end of the map unit. This is unit 1. In this unit, we discussed map keys. We looked at and identified the continents and the oceans. We talked about the difference between physical and political maps. We discussed the difference between climate and weather. And in this last lesson, we used our reading skills and applied them to the history of our original 13 colonies. So remember, if you need to work on your GED, or if you're a transition student, you're looking for some classes that'll help you improve your skills, give us a call at 502-213-5212. Drop us a message on our Facebook page at JCTC Skills U. Leave us a note. There's a little discussion tab on the YouTube channel. You can leave us a note there, Skills U Online, and we'll help you get enrolled. We'll help you get started and help you finish your goal. Well, we're here for you. So watch for our Skills U Online Unit 2, be coming up in the next week or two. It's going to be talking about United States history. We're going to be touching on some of the wars that you're going to be working on in Unit 1, and also some other areas that have occurred over the years. We've got a lot to work on with that. The Unit 3 will cover civics, and then Unit 4 will cover government. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with this day in history. Let me pull it up and share the screen. Okay, it takes a minute for it to get started. Today, actually, this is June 17th. Today is the anniversary of our Statue of Liberty being brought over and set up. And remember, Statue of Liberty was a gift from France. And there's a little bit we'll be touching on that in history as well that is really interesting. I'm really excited about being able to talk to you about that because it's really a lot of fun to learn about. Okay, we're about to get started here. Here we go.
Here's a look at this day in history.
1775, the Battle of Bunker Hill was fought between British soldiers and Boston militia. On this day in 1928, aviator Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. In 1972, 5 men were arrested for burglaring Democratic Party headquarters at the Watergate complex in Washington. The attempted cover-up of White House involvement in the break-in would bring down the Nixon administration. And on this day in 1885, the world's largest immigrant arrived in New York. The Statue of Liberty, a symbol of American freedom, a gift from France, she arrived in 350 pieces. Assembled, she stood 151 feet tall and weighed 225 tons. A beautiful sight to the millions who's welcome to America.
And that's this history.
And that's it for us in Unit 1. And we will see you next time. And join us for Unit 2. Don't forget, give us a call at 502-213-5212, and we'll be more than happy to help you get enrolled in your GED studies. Thanks, and you have a great day.